I thought of several different ways that we encounter the police as the public. One being 911 calls, another being traffic stops, police interrogation interviews or investigative interviews, arrests, and as I said previously, interrogations. Does anyone have any other ideas or any different encounters that they've had with the police other than these that I've listed? No, I thought this pretty much covered what most people would go through. And I have a question for you all. What do you think the most dangerous public encounters that police officers have? So in other words, what encounters are the most dangerous for police officers in their practice or in their jobs? Does anyone have any ideas?
Well, I would think if you're responding to maybe a robbery.
Okay, anyone else have any ideas?
Traffic stops?
Okay, anyone else?
On the street stops?
Well, what these statistics show is the most dangerous encounters are domestic related, when people are called 911 and they have a domestic situation. Does anyone have any idea about why that's probably the case, why it's one of the most dangerous encounters for people as well as the police?
I think for the police, you're already walking into an already volatile, chaotic situation, and you don't know what has transpired beforehand.
That's correct. Anyone else have anything else? Well, I think that one factor might be, obviously, as you stated, the emotions are high, and although people call the police on maybe their significant other, they still love that person. So if the police are taking them into custody, arresting them, that other individual might become engaged in that situation. Okay. Now, what I like to say to mostly all of my clients and the people I speak with is knowledge is power. Knowing your rights and knowing what to do in certain situations gives you power. One, clearly I named the speech, right to remain silent. What I mean by right to remain silent is any encounter you have with the police, you are not in the position, you're not forced to speak with them, you're not forced to answer questions by them. You have the right to do exactly that, remain silent and say nothing. You have the right to refuse consent, regardless of your immigration status. And when I say consent to search, I mean your person, your personal items, your car, and your home. Those are the things that are meant by the right to remain silent and the right to refuse consent to search. Now, in certain situations where you may call the police, obviously you're speaking with them because you're calling the police to ask for help in certain situations. If the situation continues and it's an uncomfortable feeling, even though you called the police, you have a right to end that exchange. You do not have to continue the exchange even if you call the police yourself. As far as search, do you think if you call the police to your house, what does anyone think? Can the police come in and search your house just because you called the police to your house? Yes.
I don't believe so. I think that they would have to have a warrant to search your property.
That is correct. You don't have, if you call the police and you have them into your home, just because you have the police actually enter your home doesn't mean that they have the right to search your home. Now, these are practical ways to exercise your rights. Now, I know we all hear about different incidents on TV or in the news in reference to encounters that escalate. Has anyone had any situation or heard about any situation on the news recently in reference to exchanges with the police that you all can recount? So have you heard about any incidents with the police?
Well, especially what happened in El Paso, I don't know if you asked me things like that. I was actually riding with a friend yesterday, and he mentioned a situation where he was pulled over and backup was called, and he was kept in that position for about an hour. Long story short, he ended up taking them to court. So I've had situations like that.
Now, that is a good that's a good example. Now, there's the behavior that we decide to take part in has a lot to do with obviously the outcome. Obviously, we cannot control the police officer. We cannot control him calling backup or her calling backup. but we can do certain things during any encounter. One is most important is be respectful. And what I mean being respectful is just pleasant and courteous. That goes a long way with police officers, being pleasant and being courteous. Now, when people think that I know my rights and I don't have to talk to you, and saying things like that, that might be true, but just saying simply, I don't wish to speak with you, and ending it there is the best advice I would state. That trying to engage into what may become a negative exchange with a police officer does not most likely end in a positive way. And even if you feel like you're right, as you said that your friend filed a suit or can make a complaint against the police, those are the proper measures, not right on the scene. As I stated, be courteous, be respectful, and keep your hands to the side. That's what I would recommend. And the reason being for that is if you're moving around flailing your arms, you're giving the police an idea to be uncomfortable, to feel unsafe. Also, not running. If you run, clearly the police can believe that that's a consciousness of guilt, that you're running away from the police because you have something to hide or some guilty mind or behavior. And try to remain calm. That's very good advice. And in situations, because I could give anecdotally many cases that things that have occurred with my clients where they may have been arrested, they may have had a verbal exchange that wasn't positive with the police, which has caused an arrest for simple things like disorderly conduct and things like that, or assault. Because once we go from a disorderly conduct and then the police try to arrest an individual and they feel as though you have violated my rights, I shouldn't be arrested, and the actions by an individual might raise to the level where the police believe it's an assault. And in situations like that, you might come out at the end after you've been arrested, after you go to court, and after maybe a trial or a dismissal, but you've been through that whole process. Yes, the vindication at the end, and said you're right at the end, but if you backtrack and rewind that from the beginning, you could put yourself in the position for that never to happen. Clearly, there's mistakes made by the police, there's criminal behavior that has been taken place by the police, but we have to take our safety into our own hands, and that's what I'm trying to get across to everyone here today.
So you mentioned about a couple of minutes ago about do not say anything, like exercising your right to remain silent. What does it mean to remain silent? Let me just take a scenario. The police pulls me over and it's like, okay, sir, do you know the speed limit of the road? Now, should I just remain silent? Maybe I don't.
Well, if
maybe I didn't think I was speeding, and I didn't see him use anything to really take me that house.
Well, I think that that's a very good question. In a traffic stop, my advice in this situation would be to, once again, be courteous and say, I believe I was going, whatever you thought you were going, I didn't believe I was speeding. If they believe you were speeding, you will take that up in court. Don't argue with them. I've never seen a case in my 24 years now of practicing where arguing with the police gets you anywhere. Because arguing your point is, you do that argument in court. Unfortunately, that when they stop you, they have the technology, they're going to have to prove their case in court. So being pleasant, being courteous, and stating, I didn't believe I was speeding, probably I would leave it at that. Arguing back and forth is not really, at that point in time, going to get you anywhere.
Okay, so if I'm exercising my right to remain silent,
okay,
does that mean I have to do what they're asking me to do? Does say nothing mean do nothing?
No. Now, if the police have stopped you in a traffic stop, they ask you, and I was going to get to that later on, but when they ask you, but I can answer this question now, when they will ask you for your license and registration. In situations like that, when the police stop you, I would just pull the car into a safe place, stop the vehicle, and wait till the police officer comes to your car. Do not start rummaging through your wallet and the glove compartment to get your information. And the reason for that is the police obviously are stopping someone they do not know on the street. In their mind, they're thinking that you could be reaching for a gun, you could be reaching for something that's dangerous. Obviously, you know you don't have a gun in your car, but they don't know that. So you have to think smart. Wait till they get to the car. When they ask you for the information, because they might be stopping you because, you know, something's falling out of your trunk, because you have something in your trunk or on the top of your car you don't realize, well, that's not going to be necessary. So when they ask you, you follow, give them your driver's license and registration, and as far as any other information, that's all you have to give them with a stop, okay? If they ask you, can I search the vehicle, you have a right to say no, okay? And when I say you have a right to say no, you verbally say no, okay? There's certain exceptions that they can search your vehicle. Say if they stop your vehicle and they believe they smell marijuana in your car. Well, if they smell marijuana in your car, they can, that rises to the level in their mind to probable cause, and they can search your vehicle because there's an exception to the warrant rule of an automobile search, okay? Because automobiles can be moved. It's not like a house where they can come back and get a search warrant. It's like the car is going to be gone. So there's different laws in reference to the search of vehicles. But you have the right to say, you cannot search my vehicle. Now, if they, after that, search your vehicle, you stand by. You should be calm, respectful, and courteous because you've made your position known that you do not have consent to search my vehicle. Yelling and screaming and making a scene is not going to get you anywhere.
Can I record the situation?
I'm sorry?
Can I record the situation with my cell phone? If, let's say, even though that's not mine.
You can record with your cell phone. I think being disrespectful and putting in their face saying, I'm recording you, I got you, they can say you're obstructing them from doing their job if you're interfering with what they're doing. So that's another issue. But in reference to the search of the vehicle, obviously you didn't consent to the search of the vehicle in the scenario that I just explained, but in certain circumstances, they have the ability to do it. And even if they're wrong, that's an issue that will be taken up in court, okay, in reference to an illegal search. That argument is reference to an illegal search is not made on the street because it's not going to come out really realistically in your favor because the police officer is not a lawyer. The police officer is just a police officer. And they're investigating situations and they are trying to remain safe on the street. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Yes, okay. Okay, we definitely discussed remain calm, do not run. As we were talking about, don't argue. That's great advice when it comes to the police. Because I know in certain situations, as we're talking about a stop, or maybe you're walking down the street, and we've had several cases in Montgomery County here where there's been police encounters with young people, where I believe there's a case in Silver Spring. I don't know all the specific facts, but the police officers came in contact with some individuals outside of McDonald's, and they believed they were loitering, and there was an exchange. And I believe that being respectful, following lawful instructions of the police is what needs to be done. And when I say lawful, if the police are investigating, let's say there was a robbery down the street from where you're located, and they have the allegation that they're looking for a woman with reddish hair and a pink outfit, and they stop me. And I say, you can't stop me, I didn't do anything. And they say, well, I need you to remain here. You fit the description of someone who is allegedly involved in a robbery. We need you to remain right here. If I take off running, then I run the risk of getting arrested because that right there is arguably a lawful stop, a lawful detention, because I fit the description of an individual that has committed an offense. So that's an example of also in situations with the police, a good idea is to ask if I'm free to leave. And if the police say, yes, you are free to leave, then you don't run away, you walk away. Therefore, you're not putting any suspicion on your behavior or anything to that effect. And thank you. If you're stopped by the police, you also might exercise your right to remain silent and not answer any questions. You verbally advise the police that you do not wish to speak with them. So if you're stopped by the police and they want to ask you questions about, let's just say you're in a park, it's a barbecue, there's some incidents that's occurred, you're not involved in it, you're not a suspect in it, but you're at the location and they want to speak with you, you don't have to speak with the police. And you can state, I don't wish to speak with you. And in reference to doing that, I don't mean, being disrespectful, using profanity to yell at the police and say, and giving them your dissertation on what you believe about the police, because that's never a good thing. The key to police encounters is respect, being calm, and trying to get out of that encounter basically safe and alive and not clearly under arrest. Another thing to consider is do not physically resist the police. If you have an encounter with the police and they're speaking with you, or as I talked about before, they're doing an investigation and they believe that there's possibly a weapon, that you possibly have a weapon, let's just say you have pants and you have a bulge in your pants or something like that, or there was a situation that occurred nearby and they believe that you possibly might have a weapon, they can pat down the outline of your clothes. They cannot go into your pockets doing that pat down, but they can pat you down for safety reasons. And they may check your purse if it's readily accessible and they believe there might be a weapon in there.
What's a weapon?
What's a weapon? A gun, a knife. It could be any, you can actually, that's a good example. You can use pretty much anything as a weapon. But, they're not going to go in your purse if they think you have a pen in your purse or a pen in your pocket. But if it's something that could harm another individual, then they will pat you down for that and ask if they feel something. So during the pat down, if they feel something that they believe is a weapon, they can go in and take it out. They cannot pat you down looking for drugs. They can pat you down looking for weapons. Okay. I think we covered that one. Thank you. Now, vehicle stops. We talked about this a little briefly. I told you we were going to get to this, but we talked about this. I guess I'll talk at this time about passengers. I did talk about stopping. When the police stop you, if you're driving a vehicle, they must have reasonable suspicion that you've committed a traffic offense, and that's why they stop you. They can't just randomly stop every other blue car because you're a male or you're a woman. They have to have reasonable suspicion that you committed a traffic offense, like speeding, if they run your tags and see that your tags are expired, or if they run your tags and see that you don't have insurance registered to your car, because they can look all of that up on their computer, they can stop you. And as I previously stated, when they stop you, of course you don't start rummaging through your car. You wait right there and wait till the police come to the door and ask you for what they want. Because like I said, they may not want your registration. As far as passengers in the car have a right to remain silent as well. Now I know we talked about the fact that when you are stopped by the police, you can say, if you're the driver, I do not consent to you searching the car. If you are a passenger in the vehicle, you don't have a possessory interest in that car if you're just a passenger. If you're the passenger, you can't say, don't search this car. But you have a right for the police not to search you. If they've stopped the car, there's no reason why they've stopped you. You're not driving the car. So you have not allegedly committed or taken part in a traffic violation. Now, as a passenger, the advice is to ask the police, am I free to leave? If you're free to leave, you can get out of the car and walk. Getting out of the car and running down the street brings attention to you, and the police are most likely going to follow. Running down the street is not a good idea as a passenger. And the same things apply in reference to the respect and the courteousness to the police. Also, if you are a passenger And for instance, if you have a bag in the car, like at your feet, the police do not have a right to search your bags. The same things apply as that we talked about before, that they can't, just because they stop the car, search your bag or search you. The same law exists as far as you have a right to be safe in your home, your person, and your personal effects. I think we talked about that. Okay. In reference to when you get stopped by the police, say it's for speeding, and the police, and you don't think you were speeding. You gave the example, sir, and you said, I don't think I was speeding. What do I say? Well, when they give you a citation, that citation basically is just an acknowledgement that you're being charged with that. And they ask you to sign it, and you're just signing that I received the citation, not that I'm guilty of the citation. Because you'll get the citation, you'll be able to read it, and there's the regulations that tell you what to do if you want to fight the citation or just pay the citation. Now, if you're suspected of driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and you decide that you do not want to take the sobriety test on the street or go back to, or at the station or do the breathalyzer, in Maryland, your license most likely will be suspended if you do not take those tests. But you have the right not to take those tests. So by saying no, they can't just arrest you because you don't want to take the test. It's just that there's other ways. They're looking at your eyes, they're looking at how you are conducting yourself and things like that. But you do have the right to say, I do not want to take the test. But as we know, that driving is a privilege, it's not a right. So that right to drive can be taken away by you not taking those tests. Does that make sense? Okay. Does anyone have any questions about that? Now, if for some reason the police come to your home, whether you called them, whether someone else called them, they do not have the right to search your home without a warrant. And a warrant is a document that the police file what's called it's probable cause that they have to file information stating why your house should be searched, and a judge has to read that probable cause statement to determine if probable cause does exist, and a judge has to sign off on it. So if the police come to your home and they say we want to search your home, you have the absolute right to say no. You cannot come in my home and search, because once the police come into your home, for instance, and you give them consent, then they can come in and search everything in your home. If you say no and they do not have a search warrant, they cannot search your home except for very emergency circumstances. Like,
so even if they don't have a warrant and I verbally give them a consent?
Say that again?
So even if they don't have a warrant to search my home, for example, and I give them a verbal consent, they can proceed?
Yes, 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 yes. So let's just say, this is another interesting scenario. Let's just say you and your wife or you and your girlfriend live in the house together, and she's there and she lives there. Police believe that she lives there. The police come for some reason, investigation, and they ask, can I search their home? And she says yes. Then they have consent to search her home. She lives there, she has a possessory right to that home, and they can search her home. Now, there was exceptions to the warrant rule, which is an emergency. For instance, they always give this in law school. If someone's running, they just robbed somebody, and they just ran into that house, and they see the person run into the house, and that's exigent circumstances, and they can run into the house attempting to get that person. But they can't just make up something. There has to be a true emergency. And even if the police have a warrant, you still have the right to remain silent. For instance, they come to your house, they have a warrant, and they say, sir, Mr. Evans, we're going to search your house, we have a warrant, and then they proceed to ask you questions. Well, whose room is this? Do you live in this room? You have a right to not answer any of those questions. Just because they have a search warrant does not mean they have the right to make you answer questions. You still have that right to remain silent.
What was I going to ask? Okay, talk about situations like a wellness, like, I don't know if that's how it's called, a wellness check.
A wellness check?
Yeah, two parents
Okay.
exchange a divorce, and one parent calls the police for something that has happened in the other home. I don't know.
Well, that's a good question.
Yes, and they reported something. Do the police have a right to go in and search? Does other parent have a right? Can they just stay in the house with their kids?
Well, no, okay, if they're looking for a wellness check and they're
Yeah.
checking to see if an individual is safe, they
Yeah.
can come and do that. They cannot come and check in your drawers, in your dresser drawers, because a person cannot be in your dresser drawer.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if they're looking, they can look to see if the person's there, you know, look in the window, things like that. Unless someone gives them a key, they're not going to come in and break down the door, for
Okay,
one.
so-
So they have to be given access to the house.
Okay, so but what if the adult in that house, maybe the parent or whoever, does not open the door? The police are actually knocking. They don't know if someone is there or not. Would they forcefully open to do the
You know,
awareness check?
that's a question. I don't know the answer to that. I have not had that situation come up, because that would be an issue, because if you did a wellness check and then there's items that are found in the house that are alleged to be, you know, illegal, I would be arguing to have that suppressed. So that's a question I'd have to answer. I'm not sure. I know they can come in, but they cannot search for other things. Okay. Now, another issue as far as with kids, police encounters at school. School employees are not considered the police. For instance, I have kids, I work a lot with kids in my practice. Now, if your child's at school and there's an issue, let's say that they believe that there's marijuana being smoked in the bathroom or something like that, and they seek to look or speak to your child, when they speak to your child and sit down and ask them questions in reference to, were you involved in, you know, smoking marijuana during lunch or something like that, although they're asking about possible illegal activity, that's not considered a state actor. That's not the police. That's not a prosecutor. That's not someone who has to advise a child of their constitutional rights not to remain silent. Because if they do speak with the school employee obviously can give whatever statement that is to the police. But a child does have the right to remain silent as well. Any person does. It doesn't mean just because you're an adult, a child, you don't have the right to remain silent. As far as resource officers, because there's resource officers in every high school in the county, and those resource officers are police officers. So those are state actors. Anything you say to them obviously can be used against you in court, just like the school employees. But with the resource officers, now at school, there is what they call a school code of conduct. And in order to comply with the rules of the school, the administrators are going to try to interview your child if there's an issue, teachers, and possibly the resource officer. The best advice to your child is if something is going on, that they should ask for their parents to come to the school. So as a parent, you can advise and you can figure out whether you need an attorney for your child at that point in time. Now, the code of conduct I mentioned, that's basically the rules and the procedures that the school is required to go through in reference to disciplining your child, whether it's for detention or skipping class or an offense that may be criminal or delinquent, which is the term for acts conducted or taken part by children that would be criminal if they were adults. Now, if you were arrested, do not resist. We talked about before that if you were arrested, you might feel as though you shouldn't be arrested. You don't have probable cause. I didn't do anything. I did nothing. But the time to have that addressed is with your attorney in court. Because at that point in time, if you resist arrest and there was probable cause to arrest you, you've now added an additional charge. For instance, if the police officer believed and had probable cause to believe, say, you stole something from Target, and he arrests you, but he did have probable cause, and you resist him, you push him, you shove him or her, and you get into an altercation with a police officer, you've now added resisting arrest, assault with a theft. You get to court and you say, you know what? Here's my receipt. And they say, oh, well, he paid for, the bubble gum that was here, but you shoved the police officer. He had probable cause because the store detective advised him of certain information which gave him the probable cause to arrest you. So now you have 2 additional sustainable charges because you decided not to listen to the police, not to be respectful and resist the arrest. When you are arrested, you have the right to remain silent. You can tell the police, I don't want to speak with you, but very important, you need to ask for an attorney. Because the difference between just remaining silent and asking for an attorney is huge in the law. If you just say, I don't want to talk to you, they can come back to you an hour later and use different techniques to get you to talk to them. Now, if you say, I want an attorney, they can't come back and talk to you. They're done, unless you seek them out and say, please bring the police back, I want to talk to them. So ask for an attorney. I have to keep saying that, that's why it's in red. Say, ask for an attorney. Now, if they ask you or write down a statement for you, don't sign anything. Now, in Maryland, the police have a form, it's called MCP 50, and they go down and they ask you, or to advise you of your rights, you have the right to remain silent, you have the right to an attorney, and it states that if you do not have the money to obtain an attorney, one can be appointed to you, so on and so forth. At the end of the form, it says, do you understand all of these rights? And the police officers check it and say yes. There is no section on the form that says, do you want to talk to us? The police are not required to say, do you want to talk to us? So once they advise you of all of your rights, and you say you understand it, and they say you'll sign this, I understand it, at that point in time is the time to say, I want an attorney. But you could have said it to begin with, before they even give you that form. But if it gets to that point, and they give you that form, you have to say, I want an attorney. Because once they explain you all these rights, and they've already told you have a right to an attorney, and you don't ask for one, then that's saying basically, I'll talk to you. You do have a right to make a phone call, but one thing I want to make clear, and we have so many cases that our clients do not really understand this. Do not discuss anything about your arrest, or quite frankly, anything other than possibly if you're calling someone to get you out on bail or something like that, or bond, or to take care of your child because you have been detained. You don't discuss anything pertaining to your case, because every call is recorded except for calls that are made from the jail or detention facilities to your attorney. Do not say anything. I have so many cases where my clients are talking all day about facts about their case. What's interesting enough is on the phone, it says before you start talking, it says these calls are recorded. And they actually don't listen to that. I guess I don't know what's going on, but it says every single time this call is recorded. I'm sorry?
You want to go back?
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay. Now, these are some concerns that I can say that most of my clients talk about, and quite frankly, as a member of the public, I have. One, profiling, safety, and harassment. Anyone else give me any ideas of concerns they have with police encounters? Does anyone have any?
Well, I don't know. This happened a couple of years ago. The police officer pulled me over, and the first thing, he already has his hand by his gun, and the first word that came out of his mouth was, "Who do you think you are?" Like, he was very rude. I don't know how you classify that. There was no ticket, there was no citation. I actually saw him. I didn't say anything that I did wrong.
Okay.
It was somewhere in DC. So, but I don't know where that.
Well, this was just ideas for me. I was saying that that's not all inclusive. That was just the three I came up with. So basically, disrespectful behavior by a police officer. How did you handle that?
I mean, I just remained silent. I didn't say anything, even when he was doing all of that. I mean, I was upset, but I didn't say anything.
And then what happened after
He
you?
gave me a verbal warning and he let me go.
Okay.
I actually saw him approaching with his car. I didn't say anything that I was.
Right.
So it was like I didn't wait for some oncoming traffic, and I thought it was a very safe distance. So I made a left, and the other car, and then he let the car behind me go, and then he pulled me over, and then he had his hand right there, and he came right to the other side.
Okay.
He was like, "Who do you think you are? Didn't you see that?" So the words that came out of his mouth were very unpleasant. I sat quiet. He did all the verbal thing he was saying, and then he gave me a verbal warning. There was nothing written, and then he let me go.
Well, you're basically telling me you could be teaching this class because that was proper behavior. That's exactly, you did the, the right thing. You were able to diffuse the situation. And I think what we have to remember, and this is no way making excuses for police officers, police are people. Just like you have a bad day, I have a bad day. Unfortunately, their bad days, they're put into positions that they have guns, they have weapons, and they come in contact with people that scare them in their minds. And there's a lot to be done in reference to police training, but I think trying to be calm like you did was a great example. I mean, you're here today to talk about it. You did the right thing. You did, where you taught. I mean, that's just something you've learned, I guess, with your dealings over your life and how to deal with people. Because sometimes it's not being right is the most important thing. Being safe is the most important thing. Now, advice to give to children, and this is important. I know we talked a little bit about this. Is obviously, as parents, we always try to teach our kids to be respectful to all adults, especially police officers and people, adults and people in authority like teachers and things like that. And it's kind of hard because our kids, we teach them to be respectful. We teach them to answer questions because answer questions by adults is part of being respectful. But we also need to protect our children in reference to allowing them to know their rights. They still, as I said previously, have the right to remain silent. When they're speaking with the police, they have a right to an attorney. Now, one thing I want to make clear is when a child asks for their parents, that does not invoke their constitutional rights for an attorney. Because when you say, I want my mom, that's not the same thing. And unfortunately, the law, that's what the law says. So they have to use those words, I want a lawyer, I want an attorney. Because asking for a parent, they can continue to ask for questions. They can ask questions, they can sit and talk to them. For as kids, we represent kids, I've represented kids as young as 8, unfortunately. There is case law out there, kids 7, 8 years old, that they really don't understand, they don't have the capability to understand and the ability to waive their constitutional rights. But kids 10, 11, the courts have found that they are able to waive their constitutional rights to attorneys, to searches, and things like that. But at school, it's a real challenge because there have a lot of investigations and things happen at school nowadays, whether it's one kid pushing another kid, where those things were taken care of in school. Now they're going to court. And that's juvenile court, it's not criminal court, but still the rights, the constitutional rights that apply in criminal cases, such as right to remain silent, searches, and things like that, they are the same in juvenile court. So we really have to advise our kids to be respectful, to know the right wording. I know it's hard to think that you've got to tell your 11-year-old, but if, let's just say a child encounters a police officer in the community, it's the same as an adult, being respectful. If a child asks, if the police officer asks a child, where's your mom? Can I get your mom's information? That's something that a child should be advised. You speak respectfully to an officer, and you give my name and phone number, and you say no more. And you say, I want my mom, and I want an attorney if you're questioned by the police. Anyone have any questions in reference to that? I think that's it. Wait a second, that's it. So, did anyone have any questions about anything I've said? I hope that's been helpful. I know that it's really, it's scary out there. People are scared when they encounter the police. I don't think there's anyone in this room would say that when you're stopped by the police, even for speeding, my heart, I deal with police officers every day, and still my heart is pounding when I'm stopped by the police. It's just something that's automatic. Because you know that, what did I do? I have no idea what I did, and then they stop, and you're not sure, how they're going to react to you. And especially, there's another aspect that I didn't bring up, is when you have multiple people in your car. And I understand when you have multiple people in your car, you can't control the other people in your car, which goes back to what I always advise my juvenile clients. That means you need to be careful about who you have in your car. because if they don't have the same values that you do, they put you in jeopardy. Because if I'm in the car and I have 3 people and one person in the back seat decides to open the door, bolt, and start running, and I'm going to Montgomery Mall, you know, now the police have stopped me. They want to search my car. They're going to detain me on the side of the road because this person has run down the street because I don't know what they're doing. I'm going to Montgomery Mall. So it's definitely about judgment and trying to remain calm and remain silent. So I'll end it on that. Thank you.